Hello and welcome everyone. So I'll be explaining Codeforces Global Round 19 problem C.Andrew and Stone's simple and straightforward problem statement. And well, the statement actually said that you're going to be given n piles where each and every pile would have some number of stones, and what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to tell the minimum number of operations you need in order to move all the stones inside the piles to either the first pile or either the combining either the first pile or either the and the last pile. So like in between the first and the last pile, which we don't want any sort of stones inside our pile. So we want to like erase all those, or like to take those stones and put them in either the first pile or either the last pile, because we need to like clean the table, so called, here. And we need to find out the minimum number of operations we could. Now, what is the operation? That is important. The operation is that you can only pick 3 different integers, meaning 3 different piles, and what you can do is you are allowed to like pick only 2 stones of the middle pile, and you can divide those two stones, one of them to the left side, meaning the position that you picked on the left side of the pile, and put the other stone out of the 2 stones to the right side of the pile. Meaning if I pick the operations between this pile, and this pile, let's say, and okay, let's say here I've got one other stone. Now if I pick an operation, what would happen is that let's say my I is this is J, and this is K, and I want to do the operations. What I can do is I can take only 2 stones. Like if I say I'm picking up these 2 stones, and I'm going to divide them into 2 ways. So one stone is going to go here, the other stone is going to go here, and thus emptying this pile itself. And by doing these operations, we need the minimum number of operations that we could apply in order to like clear up the space between the first and the last pile. And yeah, that's exactly what we're gonna have to do. Now, the first thing we need to check is, let's talk about some before jump on to the real general solution or the main solution. We're gonna have to talk about some of the test cases, because there were some corner cases that we need to take care of. First corner case would be that if n is equal to 3, and then you can only apply 1 operations, and you know that would be, let's say n equal to 3, and we have this 3 piles available. Now you can only pick 1 operation, because I and J and K, they will be different. So you're like bound to take this operation. Now the first thing we need to know is that when n is equal to 3, if the middle element, the one from where you're gonna take the value and divide them onto 2, divide them to in between first and the last pile, so like that middle pile should have an odd number of stones, because that's obvious. If there is like, meaning odd number of stones, meaning that, just think about it. What was the operation doing? The operation is that you can only pick 2 stones at a time. Now if you pick 2 stones at a time from an odd number, what does that result at the end of the day? At the end of the day, you are remaining only 1 stone. Any odd number, if you cut down 2 if you like subtract it by 2, eventually at the end of the day, what you're gonna be remaining with only 1 stone. So you cannot make an operation on that particular 1 stone, right? So that's why you cannot just make an operations if the n is equal to 3. Okay, if the n is equal to 3 and the middle element is odd, any number, just think about it. Let's just assume that it was 5. Now what's the thing that you could do? You could just allow an operation, just apply it. Okay, 2 stones will be like subtracted from here, and it's going to give first 3, and then we're going to subtract again, and if I do that, I'm remaining with 1 stone. So now we cannot make an operations, but we're told that we need to clear up the space in between the first and the final pile, right? But we cannot here, just because the number of stones are odd. When the case, only in the case of n equal to 3. Now the second corner case would be, we have the first pile and we have the last pile. Apart from these 2 piles, if in between each and every pile does have equal to 1, okay, does have equal to only 1 number of stone. Like in this case, think about it, apart from the first and the final pile, every single pile, if I delete this, every single pile would have only 1 number of stones. This is the like special corner case. For this case, you cannot just make it through and clear up the space, because that's obvious. Just look at it. You cannot even apply an operation, let alone reaching to the result, right? Because each and every pile in between first and the last is equal to 1, and you cannot even apply the operations, because in order to apply the operation, what you have to do is subtract 2 stones. You can only subtract 2 stones at a time, but you already have 1 stones in each of the pile in between the first and the last pile. So yeah, this was the another corner case. Now these 2 corner cases, the answer would be, of course, -1. That is, of course, and also if n equal to 3 and the middle pile element is even, then of course you can always make the operation. But what? So I was actually trying to explain you for the case of -1. Like, these are the only -1 cases, and apart from that, every case that you can possibly come up with, you can eventually make this possible, to like clear the space in between the first and the last pile. And that is possible because now you might say, how is it possible? How can I like try to come up with a solution that apart from these 2 I can get the answer? Now if I take another, okay, now yeah, now comes to the general and the real solution. The answer, apart from those 2 cases where the answer was -1, you cannot possibly make it through. Now for the general case, think about the first pile and the last pile. Now, do they actually matter in your like clearing up the space? Think about it. They actually do not matter, but in order to like clearing up the space in between the piles, in order to clearing up the space in between these piles, these 2, like the first pile and the last pile does make a huge role, because like, let's say that this is an even number. Now if that is an even number, you can always make it possible. You can always drag something here and two stones, just like that. But what if any of the pile in between the first and the last pile is odd, and that is not, of course, apart from the cases that we discussed. Let's say that this is 3. Let's take one example. Like, let's take an example from the test cases: 1, 2, 2, 3, and 6. Okay, we have 1, 2, 2, 3, and 6. Now think about it. What we have here, we have 3. We have an odd number, but we also do have some even numbers. Now the best way to do that, first of all, we need to make the even an odd number. First of all, we need to make the odd numbers an even number somehow. Now in order to make the odd number an even number, we need +1, right? So if we need +1, meaning every odd number that we face here, we could make a border, right? We could make it our operations final, or maybe the first index. I'm talking about I, J, and K. If we want to make some odd number even, because we have to make an odd number even in order to clearing up the space. Let's say we want to make this 3 an even number. For doing that, we have to make it either K or either I, depending on the position where that odd number is. Now, in this scenario, in this circumstances here, you could easily see that, okay, it's going to be obviously convenient if I take 3 as my K index, and J, I could take some even number in between this, and I could take the first or the last, or the first, like the ith index. I could take the first pile. Now if I make an operation, what's going to happen? These two in between the index of I and J, we're going to take down 2 stones. One of them would go to here, making it 4 an even number, and one of them would go to here. So like the first and the final piles are actually my helping hand in order to like captivate the border, captivate inside the border, that we could perform the operations. If we needed if we want to get rid of some values, we could use these border values, the first and the final, like the first and the final, these pillars here that we want to deal with. Now yeah, that's exactly what we're gonna have to do. And so in this case, the same thing happened. Like after making it even, now the case is simple. You don't have to do anything. Just make these every even number and subtract it by 2, and clear up the space by making these values as your J and I and K as respective your 2 pillars. So yeah, that's exactly what we gonna have to do here. Okay. Okay, what if we had something? Let's take another case. Let's say we have 5 here, and now we have, let's say, 1, but we have 3 here, and we have 7. Now the question is, how are we gonna make this our valuable, like how is this even possible to come up with a convenient answer with this? Now as you can see, every number is even, every number is odd. So our first task would be to make these numbers even, right? So first of all, I cannot make operations here. I could make an operation. If I want to make an operations, my only option would be to go like to go and pick this, or yeah, to go and pick this. Now think about it. If I make an operation here, so like 2 stones gets erased from here, so this does become 1 after I make the first operation. This is J, this is I, this is K. Remember, so 2 stones they divided into 2 parts. This becomes 8, this becomes 2. Remember, we just, as you can see, we've just converted an odd number to an even number. Like now we have 5, 2, and 1, and 8, right? Now what we can do, now our task would be to make this odd number an even number. How are we going to do that? If I make an operation here, this is my J, this is my I, and this is my K, what's going to happen? I'm going to take this, I'm going to divide it by 2, meaning 1 stone would go to here, the other one would go to here, eventually making 6, and eventually making 6, 0, and 2, eventually making 6, 0, 2, and 8, right? 6, 0, 2, and 8. So as you can see, this becomes 0. Sorry. Yeah, after applying the operation, this becomes 0, and this becomes 2. This 1 becomes what? 2, and this becomes 8. So as you can see, the middle pillars are like they're stones. We have actually cleared up the odd numbers. Now all we have left right now is like the even numbers. Now we know that we could easily just deal with the even numbers just by dividing it by 2, because we're just going to subtract it by 2 and make it count as our one operation. Now if I yeah, let's take it to the code part so that we can understand more about it. Okay, okay, so yeah, there you go, the problem, like, yeah, okay, this is the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. See, yeah, first of all, we're gonna like add every even numbers in between the first and the last pile, because like at the end of the day we're always gonna make the operations from the even. That's gonna help us in order to reduce the in order to make the odd the even. So if we somehow encounter any odd number, we know that somehow we have to add 1 to that odd number, no matter what. So that's why we're adding 1. And at the same time, we're also checking whether that odd number is 1 itself or not. It's actually for just measuring the corner cases that we talked about at the beginning when describing the solution of this problem. And this is exactly what we're these two minus 1 that I've printed here. These are the corner cases that we have discussed earlier, and apart from that, the answer would be the result divided by 2. Again, every odd number we have to add 1 in order to make it even. Now, about the even numbers, we're just going to add that because we don't need to add any more to that. And at the end of the day, what are we actually doing? We are each and every operation is actually subtracting 2 stones. So at the end of the day, the answer or the result would be divided by 2. Sum of all those integers divided by 2. All those stones divided by 2. Like, that's how we're going to be actually solving this problem. So I hope you enjoyed the solution, and yeah, till next time, goodbye.